fantasy anime. There have been numerous instances where the main character makes the world revolve around him because of his unreal strength. And today, we'll be talking about such anime. Hence the title, Top 10 Harem Anime, where the OP MC surprises everyone in a fantasy world. Now, shall we begin? Make sure you press that like button. The first one on our list is Yaojing Zhongji Xiaoche, Demon Spirit Seed Manual. One day, when an otaku by the name Yuan Ding is on his way to an otaku convention, he unironically gets transported to a fantasy world. This new world is full of magic and demons. However, he fails the entrance exam at a well-reputed academy and ends up deciding to be a gardener instead. And for that, he starts learning about fairy seeds. His grand goal is to collect the fairies that only exist in the legends, and in turn become the main character of this new world. Hyakuren no Hao Toseiyaku no Valkyria, the Master of Ragnarok and Blesser of Einherjar. The main character, Yuto, ends up getting himself into something big when in reality, he was just trying to test an urban legend together with a friend. The legend itself is kind of stupid. It's just him taking a selfie in front of the mirror of the local shrine. But the instant he takes the selfie, he just suddenly disappears from the world and reappears in another world. In this new world, he is thoroughly welcomed, and so he tries to use whatever knowledge he has of history to be of help to these people. Furthermore, he also gets a harem of lovely maidens who all adore him and his questionable wisdom. Hachinante, Sore wa nai desho. The eighth son? Are you kidding me? One day, a 25-year-old Japanese salaryman who was just downright exhausted from his everyday stressful life ends up falling asleep while doing work. But instead of just a nap, he wakes up as the son of a noble family. However, this noble family is quite unusual. They don't have many resources to make ends meet, and the protagonist isn't their first son. He isn't their second son either. He's their youngest one of them all. In other words, he's their eighth son. That's why the story starts off in a pretty awkward manner for the protagonist, who's now a 6-year-old boy born in a noble family that can barely even make ends meet. Campion. This anime features a tremendous number of supernatural abilities. There's invisibility, time traveling, flying, and dozens of other abilities that you can come up with within 10 seconds. The main character, Godao, defeats the god of war in Mortal Kombat and in turn attains the title of Campion. He cares deeply for his sister and couldn't care less about anyone else, or does he? This is a harem edgy fantasy anime, or at least that's what it seems to be at first, but despite the mashup of these genres, it manages to be a surprising watch. Not to mention his overpowered strength is the real deal. This anime embodies the whole concept of a one-man army. Peter Grill Tokinja no Jikan, Peter Grill and the Philosopher's Time. This one is a recent anime that came out last year, and in more ways than one, this anime takes the harem fantasy genre to a whole new level. The episodes are short. They're around half the length of a regular episode. Though, talking about the story, the main character is a guy named Peter. He's been dubbed as the strongest warrior in the world. However, gaining this title only made his life harder. Peter is a straightforward guy who just wants to go out with the girl he loves. But after the news of him getting labeled as the strongest goes around, women of all races suddenly start seeking him in order to get his seed. Will Peter really be able to stay pure for the girl he loves? Ariforeta Shokogyo de Sekai Saikyo. Ariforeta, from commonplace to world's strongest. Here we have the story of a 17-year-old otaku bao named Hajime. One day, he and his classmates are stripped of their normal lives as they are summoned to another world and are given the task of saving it. Every one of his classmates gains a special ability or skill, but Hajime himself is stuck with a not-so-flashy transmutation skill. He isn't even sure how to make proper use of it. Not only that, he's also made fun of by his classmates. Later, there's an expedition, but Hajime is backbitten by a classmate who then makes him fall into the abyss, straight down to the very bottom. He miraculously survives, but finds himself surrounded by all sorts of different monsters that can kill him any second. No doubt he's scared, but he still knows that he'd rather fight, just let himself die. Fortunately, he comes across other folks, eventually realizes how to make use of his unusual skill, and in turn, sets forth on his path of going from commonplace to becoming the world's strongest. Isekai no Seikishi Monogatari, Tenshimuyo, War on Geminar. This one is an OVA, and the episode length is quite different. There are 13 episodes, and each one of them is around 40 minutes long. It follows the story of a 15-year-old boy named Kenshi, who ended up getting brought, or rather kidnapped, to the world of Geminar. and he's told that if he wants to go back to his world, he must assassinate the new princess. It's not that difficult. All he has to do is pilot a mechanoid and get the job done. However, during one of the encounters, he is captured by the enemy, but the queen orders to keep the pilot alive. And when they discover that the pilot is a male, everyone is oddly taken aback, because seeing a male pilot at Geminar is as rare as finding a pool of diamonds. The queen decides to make him her attendant, and now he has to attend her academy along with her. Things have gotten pretty complicated, and what's to come next is even more complex. Conception. The story begins with a high school graduation ceremony. The main character, Itsuki, and his cousin have just graduated, but then she tells him that she's pregnant. But the moment these words come into her mouth, a sudden gate pops up out of literally nowhere, and the two of them are transported to a fantasy world together. The name of this new world is Granvania, and several impurities reside here that cause chaos and disorder. The only way to fight them is by giving birth to star children who can then fight the impurities. And so, Itsuki is given a job, which is to sleep with a ton of girls, and only after his job is done that he and his cousin can return back home. Death March. Kara Hajimaru Isekai Kyusu Kyoku. Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. The protagonist of this story is a programmer who happens to be around 30 years old, but he's living a very exhausting life considering how he always has more work than he can ever handle. So one day, when he finally gets a chance to sleep properly, he sleeps like there's no tomorrow. And when he wakes up to a mash-up world of all the games that he's been debugging over the years. His physical appearance makes him look younger, and his name is also changed to the alias he used to use while debugging those games. His new name is Satao, but before he can fully analyze the situation, he's suddenly attacked by lizard men. Though it was no big deal, he takes good care of them. Before long, he becomes the center of attention in this new world, and even ends up with a harem. Isekai Cheat Magician. The main character, Taichi, and his childhood friend, Rin, are both high school students, until one day, while they're on their way to school, a sudden light enters the scene, and in turn takes them to a new world, one that's filled with magic and numerous magical creatures. When they enter this new world, they immediately come across a beast. Fortunately, they're saved by a group of nearby adventurers, who then instruct them that it's not a good idea to walk around unarmed. And so they end up at a guild and get their magical powers measured. Unsurprisingly, both of them display an insane amount of magical potential that completely outclass the average mage. It's almost like they're hacked, they cheated. Soon enough, they get used to this new world and its powers and become prominent additions to the conflicts in this new world. But will they be able to return back home? There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and found something that you haven't watched yet. Now,